From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Heated exchange on Capitol Hill as trade tariffs take effect, a pre-summer warm-up and its impact on crops.
There should be plenty of growing degree days this year.
Fears of a short supply of hay and agribusiness tracking price movements in the cattle market.
Come into this summer month with, as expected, some record large on-feed numbers. So we knew we're coming into a lot of beef.
And a Texas producer shows how to make a buck from pond scum.
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado. High-strength steel for high-strength dependability.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross taking pointed questions from lawmakers during a fiery hearing over steel and aluminum tariffs. Last month, the administration placing a 25% tariff on steel and 10% tariff on aluminum shipped into this country. Commerce Secretary Ross is defending the tariffs as necessary to revive America's steel and aluminum industries. But even some members of the president's party are criticizing the move. National reporter Betsy Gibbon has details of the heated rhetoric.
Clinton senators from farm country demanding answers during the Senate Committee on Finance hearing, wanting explanations on Trump's trade strategy and the administration's plan for farm country amid falling row crop prices this week.
The committee will come to order.
Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross sitting through critical comments on trade tension around the world.
I just don't see how the damage posed on all of these sectors could possibly advance our national security.
As the administration's trade moves seem more like knee-jerk impulses than any kind of carefully thought-out strategy.
Ross taking hard-hitting trade questions on the purpose of steel and aluminum tariffs on China.
Of the steel and aluminum products targeted, only about 5% are from China.
And Canada.
What is our trade deficit in steel with Canada?
We don't have a trade deficit of note.
We don't?
No, sir.
Do we have a surplus with Canada in steel?
All while senators from farm country caution the tariff moves, citing falling grain prices from earlier in the week.
The closing price in Dodge City, here's the farm report, for wheat was down about 70 cents per bushel, corn down about 3 cents, sorghum down about 4 cents.
We've watched the soybean markets start to collapse from a upper $9 range to a mid $8 range.
I met last Friday with a delegation of farmers from North Dakota. They felt that the market price, at least of soybeans, which was the main product they discussed with me, that the market price decline has been exaggerated by speculative activity.
Senators pressing Ross for a plan of what the administration will do if retaliation against commodities continue.
As you know, the president has directed the Secretary of Agriculture to use every power that is at his disposal to help the agriculture parties who are adversely affected by retaliation.
What do you mean when you say the Secretary of Agriculture should do everything he can do? Who, by the way, I think opposes these policies, but...
Well, I'm not in detail familiar with all of the tools the Secretary...
But how can you not be familiar with them? You've come here and testified that that's how you're going to solve the issue.
It's up to the Secretary of Agriculture to come because each of the segments of agriculture is quite a different segment.
Ross continuing to defend steel and aluminum tariff moves, saying since the U.S. implemented tough tariff policies, idle plants are restarting up again in many states, and new investments are coming online as well.
Meanwhile, the European Union will begin its retaliatory tariff Friday in response to the U.S. metal tariffs. American exports worth $2.8 billion will be subject to tariffs immediately. The EU counter tariffs will hit 200 types of U.S. products, including corn, rice, orange juice, and Harley-Davidson motorcycles. According to a report in the Washington Post, temperatures at the surface of the tropical Atlantic Ocean are the coldest they've been in the middle of June since at least the early 1980s. That could have an effect on this hurricane season, weakening storms that rely on warm water. But it's been Gulf and Atlantic moisture that's been driving rainfall these last few months. This was the scene in Texas Tuesday as massive amounts of rain poured into coastal regions. Some areas getting more than a half foot of rain from the system. Nationally, temperatures in May and June have been hot. June is on pace to be one of the warmest on record, but rain is helping to mitigate the effects of that heat and helping to fight off expansive drought. Although that wet ground could spell trouble for pollinating crops in the next couple of weeks.
The problem seems to be that with this ample moisture and the temperatures that seem to be running consistently above average, during some of these more significant heat waves that we've already seen this summer, we have been dealing with high overnight temperatures, which, as you know, can take a toll on crops, does not give them a chance to really rest at night. So especially with corn, which really gets a one-chance opportunity to move through reproduction without any problems. If we get an untimely heat wave during the heart of corn reproduction, silking and beyond, that could be an issue if temperatures are only dropping into, say, the mid or high 70s during that time.
Betsy Gibbon will have more from meteorologist Brad Rippey tomorrow, including a look at the forecast for the remainder of summer and early fall. Let's turn it over now to our own meteorologist, Mike Hoffman. He has today's crop comments. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Clinton. Summer weather often comes with a risk of storm damage for crops. Take a look at these photos from Pete Meyer. He says this is what corn looks like for miles and miles in LaSalle County, Illinois. USDA's latest crop progress report rated 88% of the state's corn crop as good to excellent. Now, take a look at this video from Matthew Stacy. He was in Greeley, Colorado Tuesday when it was hit by what they call a hail bomb. He says the falling ice lasted 30 minutes and covered the ground several inches. Much of the hail was quarter-sized or bigger, and anywhere it hit, the crops there were shredded as well. Wow. Now, taking a look at the wind speed forecast, you can see a storm system in the middle of the country going to give us some areas of wind as we start the day today, and you can see that will kind of continue as it slowly progresses off to the east. A little bit of wind in the northern Rockies as well. Starting the day tomorrow, it's going to be windy in parts of Texas and parts of the lower Great Lakes back into Iowa, and we'll see those winds increase once again in both of those areas as we head through the afternoon hours. We'll have your forecast coming up, but first here are some hometown temps.
Plan for the unexpected with weather forecast updates. Local forecasts are delivered right to your cell phone each morning, making planning a little bit easier. Just text Weather 6 to 31313 to get started.
All right, when we come back, checking cattle markets and price movements with Craig Van Dyke. He's over at the Agribusiness Desk. And later, we're off to the Lone Star State, where a farmer is growing his future in algae. In agribusiness, let's see how markets reacted midweek. For that, we head to the CME in Chicago.
Perfect storm for the bearishness in the soybean market over the past couple of weeks. Supply and demand fears mounting up and causing the market for a horrendous break. We are very oversold, and we wouldn't rule out the possibility of a short-term recovery bounce. The first factor that we're looking at is the extreme oversold condition of the market. Crop ratings are at a record high level to start the growing season, but we got to keep in mind that late July and early first half of August is the most important weather sensitive time frame for the soybean crop. Any shift in the weather or any news that would suggest the U.S.-China trade relations are better and the market could explode to the upside, actually. This is Terry Rogensack coming to you from the CME Group trading floor.
Here at the Agribusiness Desk, we have Craig Van Dyke with Top Third Ag. All right, Craig, let's talk about the cattle markets. It's been kind of an interesting watch. A lot of back and forth here. What's really going on?
Well, nothing unusual as far as volatility goes in the cattle market. You know, we've come into this summer month with, as expected, I mean, some record large on-feed numbers. So we knew we're coming into a lot of beef.
Sure.
You know, and fortunately, we've had a lot of things to help offset that. This market has stayed very current. We've kept weights, you know, fairly decent. You know, demand has been fantastic, both domestically and foreign. You know, export demand in the first 4 months has, you know, been spectacular compared to what we were expecting. April beef export demand was 16% higher than 2017.
Right.
And as of right now, we're looking at export demand 2018 versus 2017 about 10% higher. So, you know, while we were coming into a potentially very scary period of just where this cattle market would head, which is no stranger to volatility, you know, we've done a lot of things to help offset that. Now, you know, the issue right now is, you know, packers have fantastic margins, and why wouldn't you kill as many as you could have fantastic margins, and they have been doing that.
Sure.
The question is, as we've had some counter-seasonal strength and demand here the past few weeks, is that, you know, seasonally we tend to see that decline in mid-July moving forward, which will still have a lot of cattle on feed. So, you know, my guess is you're probably going to see, if this continues the way we expect it to, that, you know, August and October could be some problem months as far as weakness goes. But, you know, the whole is expected to start coming out in decent February, and what I tend to see in the cattle trade is that holes or expansions tend to move a little bit faster than we all expect. So I don't, you know, I expect volatility to continue, and you throw in the trade headlines as well. There's just a lot to throw at this cattle trade for the moment.
China says they're going to put tariffs on beef. Is that a concern?
You know, that's they put something in the headline because it's a headline. You know, China's not a massive buyer of our beef, and they haven't been. You know, while, you know, I would suspect the futures market will probably struggle with it. You know, at the end of the day, the futures market is smarter than the rest of us, and they'll know where the fundamental side stands. So I don't see it being a major issue for the time being.
All right, appreciate it, Craig. Thanks for the insights. We'll be back with more Ag Day in just a minute.
For a special report on the grain markets, call toll-free at 877-TT-HEDGE. That's 877-884-3343.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman. Mike, now this system we've been watching for a while is just kind of hanging out, just kicking back in the middle of the country.
Yeah, it's moving very slowly. Here's my issue with it. If it was a state farther south, we'd be getting some of those real dry areas in northern Missouri and surrounding states. On the other side of the coin, areas north of there, like southern Minnesota, don't need the rain, but you're going to get some more of it out of this very slow-moving system. The other factor that we've been showing you an area of low pressure that came into South Texas a few days ago. That tropical-like moisture, that was a tropical-like system is what I meant to say there, is feeding into the eastern parts of this system. So there's going to be a fair amount of rain in a lot of these areas as we head through the next 2 or 3 days. Now it is moving, but it's going to be a very slow mover. So many parts of the area, I-80 corridor especially, Iowa over into northern Indiana, northern Ohio, going to get a fair amount of rain out of this system. We do have a system coming through the northern Rockies as well. That'll be a little bit more hit and miss shower activity moving through that part of the country. You can see by tomorrow morning the area of low pressure over central Illinois continuing to push off to the east. It'll move into Indiana over a 12-hour period. That's how slow it's moving. That will be the focus for the showers and thunderstorms out of that system at that point. And you can see an area of low pressure kind of forming along the tail end of this cool front. It's not going to cool down in Texas out of this system. And that will begin to cause some moisture, bringing up some moisture out of the southern portions, the southwestern portions of the country out of the Pacific Ocean. There's a precipitation estimate past 24 hours. That's that tropical moisture I was telling you about, and the main storm system with some areas already seeing 3-4 inches of rain, adding in the next 36 hours. Whoever gets these heavier thunderstorms embedded in the rains can end up with 2 or 3, 4 inches across parts of Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, even into the mid-Atlantic. So we'll have to watch this system carefully. So it is soupy through the southern tier of states and hot where it's dry, like the desert southwest. A lot cooler where it's raining, though. Low temperatures overnight, lots of 60s, even a few 50s across the plain states, still soupy through the southeast. And more of the same tomorrow. Some areas around the Great Lakes only topping out in the 60s because of the clouds and rain and wind off one of the Great Lakes. There's the jet stream. You can see this cutoff low just barely making it east. It finally folds into the flow as we head through Sunday and Monday. Quick ridge builds behind it, but another trough digging into the northern plains right after midweek. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. First of all, for Globe, Arizona, lots of sunshine and hot, high of 103 degrees. Taking a look at Springfield, Illinois, periods of rain and a thunderstorm, high around 80. And finally, Wilmington, Delaware, partly sunny, warm, rather humid, high around 83 degrees.
It's been a tough hay year for ranchers in cattle country. We'll take a look next on Drovers TV. And later, the search for an alternative crop has this West Texas farmer seeing green. From our partners at Drovers, hay supplies are getting dire across parts of cattle country. The latest U.S. drought monitor showing drought affecting 9 of the top 10 cow-producing states. Long-term precipitation deficits leading to hay supply shortages in some of the harder-hit areas. And an update to a story from Burns, Oregon, and discussions around the potential pardon from President Trump for Dwight and Stephen Hammonds. The Oregon ranchers have been incarcerated since January 4th of 2016 when they are convicted of arson on public lands.
The convictions stem from 2012 when both were found guilty of setting fires on federal land in 2001 where they had grazing rights, and Stephen was also convicted of setting a second fire in 2006. The Hammonds argued in their defense the fires were set on their own property to destroy invasive species. The fire inadvertently burned on public lands, destroying about 100 acres. Stephen Hammond reported the fire to the BLM office in Burns, Oregon, and federal prosecutors said Stephen had started the 2006 fire to cover evidence of a deer he poached on BLM land.
Henderson says in both instances, prosecutors cited it cost thousands of dollars to put out the fires and put federal employees at risk. In a plea deal, the two men agreed they would not appeal their sentence of the 2012 conviction and would pay $400,000 in restitution. The Washington Post reporting last week the Hammonds are being considered for pardon by President Trump. From pond scum to cash crop, algae farming in the Lone Star State.
In the country, sponsored by Kubota's full line of field-proven hay tools. Explore the full lineup at Kubota.com or visit your local Kubota dealer today.
In times of low prices, farmers and ranchers are often in search of alternative crops. Well, in West Texas today, there's a new crop growing. And according to Ed Wolf with Texas Farm Bureau, it's saturated in possibilities.
Algae, not your normal West Texas crop, but in the tiny town of Imperial, you'll find ponds of green, the water tinted by this aquatic plant. Bard Reed used to grow shrimp and redfish in this water. Now he grows algae. Not as far a leap as you might think.
What we produce are food products. We produce omega-3s, which people get traditionally from fish oil, but fish are just borrowing it from algae. It's algae oil is what it is. It's the plankton eat the algae, the little fish eat the plankton, and big fish eat the little fish, and it's just continuously concentrated through the food chain. And we are growing the algae that makes the omega-3, so we get it directly from the source.
West Texas is abundant in the 3 things vital for growing algae: brackish water, heavy clay-based soil, and lots of sunlight, meaning an area not suitable for most terrestrial crops is heaven for one that's submerged.
We get to do this with soil that wouldn't grow anything, with water that nothing could drink, so it's sound as can be for the environment. It's the best. It's just a whole new layer of agriculture that needs to happen and enhance what's already being done.
Many things about algae farming mirrors traditional farming, just at a faster pace and saturated in H2O. They buy their fertilizer from the local co-op, they check for pests, for nutrients, and monitor the health of the crop. Only they use a microscope.
Since we're working with a microscopic organism, we have to look at it and its environment. So monitoring it in the microscope is the best way to find the culture's health, the algae's health, and also to identify if things are in the ponds that we don't want to be there, like weeds or pests.
The team at Qualitas Health thinks of it like growing cotton. They plant, they take care of their crop, they harvest. But where a cotton farmer will only get 1 crop a year, Bart's crew is harvesting every day, all year long.
We plant once, we harvest many times. From that harvest, we make totes, that's our equivalent of modules. That goes to our extraction facility, which is the equivalent of our gin, and then we separate the algae into its pieces, the oils, the protein, the fiber, just like the fiber from cotton and the cottonseed. It's just exactly like that.
Algae is not only rich in omega-3s, but omega-7s, 9s, and 6s. Plus, it's a good source of protein. The particular type of algae they grow is called Nanochlorhynchus, or nano for short. It's photosynthetic, or grown with sunlight and carbon dioxide. It takes about 10 days from planting for the algae to grow enough density for harvest. Then it can be ready for harvest again in as little as 3 days. The products made from their algae are called iwi, a line of omega-3 supplements. They hope to produce a protein product in the future, not meant to be eaten on its own, but added as ingredients in other food to help boost nutrition. In fact, you may be eating algae right now and not know it.
There is a dye from spirulina, which is another type of algae that's farmed in open ponds like we do. And it's the only natural blue dye that's available. So if you like M&Ms and you're eating blue M&Ms, you're eating a product from algae.
Algae is unique, no doubt, But at the heart of every pond is a farmer growing a crop, immersed in agriculture. With the Texas Farm Bureau, Ed Wolf, Imperial.
And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. It's been part of your day with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.